Hey there, it's Scott. You've probably seen some of my other videos, so if you haven't, yeah, I'm Scott. If you have, then you already know who I am. A while back, I did a video about time travel. I had a lot of fun with that. Not a ton of views, but that's okay. I enjoyed it. Um, and I've been trying to come up with other video ideas now. I've done some comedy. I'm thinking of doing some videos where I bake desserts and stuff. Basically, my channel is probably going to be kind of a hodgepodge of different kinds of videos, different styles. Um, so, anyways, I was thinking when I was thinking back about my time travel video that informative videos could be a good thing to add to my lineup. Now, of course, the time travel thing was a lot of stuff that I kind of just knew, either stuff I knew or maybe my own personal theories. There's a little mix of everything. Um, this one is going to be more my thoughts on something. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm probably going to do some videos that are my thoughts on subjects. That might be some of the series of videos that you'll be seeing on my channel as I try to come up with new material. Of course, I'll continue to do comedy. I really want to do the baking thing, and well, I'm not going to talk too much about that because that's not what this video is about. But I'm just giving you an idea of where I'm going. So I think I'll call these series Scott Thoughts. Does that sound good? Sound like kind of a cheesy name. I don't know. Maybe I'll come up with a better name. But for now, we'll just call them Scott's Thoughts. Scott's Thoughts. So last time was time travel. Didn't have a title for the series, but now I do. Scott's Thoughts. Came up with it on the spot. Aren't I brilliant? Yeah, I'm a genius. So today, on Scott's Thoughts, we're going to talk about nostalgia. So the title of this episode will be, What's the Deal with Nostalgia? That was my Jerry Seinfeld impression. You know, because nostalgia, it's the 90s and that's nostalgic. Anyways, nostalgia. If you haven't noticed, and if you haven't noticed, you're under a rock or something. If you haven't noticed, nostalgia has been a big deal lately. Last few years, the whole nostalgia thing has just been a huge phenomenon. It's even becoming a great business model, a great way to make money. There's, of course, the popular YouTube series Nostalgia Critic with Doug Walker on Channel Awesome, formerly that guy with the glasses, and where he goes over nostalgic movies, TV shows. He's actually branched out and do more recent stuff, so it's not as nostalgic as it was, but then he goes back to old stuff. And his channel's hugely popular. He does other stuff. He's also got bum reviews and, it's just his own movie reviews. But one of his major characters is Nostalgia Critic. You've got nostalgic TV shows. So you got Fuller House coming up February 26th on Netflix. This is not a paid plug. I just an example. Let's see. We got Girl Meets World, sequel spin-off series to Boy Meets World. Let's see. What else do we got? Oh, we got so much nostalgia. Man, do we have nostalgic movies? No. Well, yeah, nostalgic movies. We had Terminator Genesis. Haven't seen it, but I heard it wasn't that great. But again, I haven't seen it, so I'll make my judgment on that when I see it. Though, really, everything since Terminator 2 was kind of a disappointment. Yeah, so nostalgia, big business, right? It's actually money making. So what's the deal with this? Why is nostalgia suddenly such a big thing? I mean, okay, people have always had nostalgic moments. That's nothing new. I mean, there's a reason we have a word for nostalgia, called nostalgia. But, lately it just seems to be a really big deal. So I'm going to go into why I think it's a big deal. And again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a behavior analyst of any kind. This is just my thoughts on it. Nostalgia, in case you really don't know what it is, and I think you do, is basically looking back at things from our past with fondness, usually our childhood, not always. You can be nostalgic about things from your adulthood, if it's far enough back, but, usually when you say nostalgia, you're thinking of your childhood, and in fact, this late nostalgia craze is basically going back to childhood. Oh, more nostalgia. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. Those movies, I mean, they're terrible. But, yeah, anyways, my point, nostalgia everywhere, right? And it's a big thing now. And I think the answer to this, to why we are looking back to the past, lies more in the now, in the present, than the past. So what is going on now, and what is so special about the past that we're looking back to it with such fondness? Well, I think we all know the world is a scary place. I mean, it's always been a scary place. It's always been. There's always been war, there's always been murders, there's always been all sorts of craziness going on. But lately it seems extra scary. And I'm not so much sure that it's because it really is scarier, that there's really more going on, or that we're more aware of it. But I mean, let's look at the world around us. Starting with the Twin Towers attack. You get the marathon bombing. Well, even go back to Columbine. I mean, even that was scary. But I'm particularly looking at the things that took off, starting with 9/11, that have really got us scared. We've got, you had the marathon bombings. You had the, I can't think of the name right now, but the shootings in California. The name of the location's blanking on me, but I think you know where I'm talking about. We've had the Fort Hood shooting. I mean, there's been a lot of scary stuff, and not just here, but also overseas. You had the attacks in France, 2 attacks in France within the past year, in Paris particularly, I should say. You had terrorists on TV. On top of that, you've got things in our own country besides the terrorists, just mass shootings besides that, and they've been all over the news. I mean, if something's bad, the news is going to play up. Good stuff, they'll show up, but the bad stuff gets in the ratings. That's what we see a lot of. Now, I'm not going to say that, I don't know if there's necessarily more bad stuff going on, or we just know more about it because we've got so much media. We are in an information age. We've got media coming at us left and right. We got the internet, we got our smartphones, we've got, TV, we've got TV news, both your local news, which, plays a couple of times a day, and then you get cable news that runs all day long. And you could argue its degree of reliability, depending on what channel you're looking at. But any of them you're looking at, whether they're not telling you the whole truth or not, they are giving you some truth, and that is scary stuff is going on. And some of them play it up even more than others, and I'm not going to name any networks or any stations that are doing this. But people are scared. I mean, people are scared. I mean, maybe some people don't want to admit it, but we are. There is a huge, there's a huge threat, it seems like, on Western culture. Now, there's other cultures, but I name Western culture, 1, because I'm in Western culture, and 2, because a lot of these terrorist attacks that you see in the news are very heavy on Western culture, and this nostalgia thing is kind of big in Western culture. Like I said, I can't speak for other cultures. It may also be big in Eastern cultures too. I'm just speaking, though, for what's going on here, because this is where I live and this is what I understand the most. So we got all this scary stuff going on. What does this have to do with nostalgia? Well, as adults today, we are aware of all this crazy stuff going on. But nostalgia, the things we're looking back on, were things we enjoyed when we were children and maybe, teenagers. And why is that important? Well, like I said earlier, bad stuff has always been going on. The world has always been a scary place. But as adults, I think we're more aware of it than we are when we're kids. When we're kids, we know the world's not perfect after a certain age. We get the idea that there's scary stuff out there. Some of us, unfortunately, find that out in worse ways than others. But as adults, we're particularly aware of it. And for people my age, when we were in middle school and high school, the media wasn't quite as big as it is now. I mean, I had the internet in high school, but it's not like it is now. I mean, high-speed internet was just kind of coming out. I mean, I had dial-up in high school. I had very few friends who had high-speed internet, which even by today's standard wouldn't even be considered very high-speed. I maybe had 1 or 2 friends that had something better than dial-up. So you didn't get quite the bombardment of information. And on top of that, again, there weren't quite the same things going on then as there are now. Or at least, again, the news wasn't flooding us with information on it. But again, when we're kids, again, we also weren't as aware of it. I mean, how many of us as kids enjoyed watching the news, or reading a newspaper, or picking up a news magazine? Probably not many of us. I'm sure there's some of you out there who were, and for you, it's good. You were well-informed kids. I'm sure you're well-informed adults, and that's a good thing. But most of us weren't. We were kids. We played. The most we were informed of was what cool movies are coming out, what video games, or if you're into sports, I'm not into sports, what your sports teams are doing. And as a kid, that's all well and good. I mean, but when we were kids, we didn't know about all this stuff. What we did know was, again, all our nostalgic pop culture, our cartoons when we were younger, our favorite sitcoms, I mean, all this stuff. And today as adults, when we see all this scary stuff, I think we want to get away from it. But how do you get away from something that's everywhere? How do you get away from something like that? You can't just forget. I mean, the human brain just doesn't work like that. We can't just flip a switch and not be aware of what's going on. But we can regress. And I think that's what a lot of this nostalgia is. And I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad regression. Maybe for some it is. I think it depends on how far you're taking this. But what I mean by regression is we want to go back to a simpler time. We want to go back to a time where we didn't know about all this stuff, where we weren't thinking about all this stuff. And nostalgia helps us do that. Watching old sitcoms, old Nickelodeon shows, our Saturday morning cartoons. Yes, there are adults watching their favorite Saturday morning cartoons from when they were children. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying it's happening. Or even if you're not watching it, you got it on your t-shirts, maybe you got a poster on your wall, or maybe you want to go see these new movies. Maybe even if you have kids, you're taking your kids to see these things that are kind of nostalgic. Almost like you're trying to bring them back too, even though they're probably not really all that aware of what's going on. But you kind of feel like, I want them to have that simplicity I had. I want them to know that time I had. Because we all look back on the time when we were younger as the good old days, And I think we all know that the good old days, no matter what age you are, really weren't all that good. I'm sure, my parents would talk about the good old days, and their parents before them, and yet we'll look at it and say to ourselves, well, when you were a kid, Vietnam was going on, or when you were a kid, maybe if they're old enough, World War II was going on. That was a scary time. But again, you were young, you were a kid, you weren't quite as aware, and maybe you noticed more the things you enjoyed. And we're doing the same thing now. My generation, our generation is doing the same thing. We're looking back, and when we watch these things momentarily, while we're watching these nostalgic movies, these old TV shows, or as we indulge in spin-off TV shows like Fuller House, which obviously is not out at the time of making this video, but it will be soon. While we're watching that, while we're in that moment, for the time being, we're in the past. We're kids again. And all the bad stuff is gone. All the scary, crazy stuff around us isn't there. It hasn't happened yet. It kind of makes us feel like we're in that time again, and we feel safe and secure and comfortable. Is this a good thing or a bad thing to do? I don't know. If it gets to the point where you're denying reality, I think it's a bad thing. If it's a moment of solace, if it's a time where you can get away and you can just kind of forget about what's going on around you, what scary stuff is around you, but you come back to reality, maybe that's not so bad. I think there are probably better ways to deal with it, and by better I mean things that will help us more long term rather than just a short term solution. But I understand where people are coming from, and you know what? I've done it too. Heck, I go on YouTube and I look up things about TV shows when I was a kid. Sometimes I even watch cartoons from when I was a kid. I was actually watching episodes of Gargoyles. I got The Adventures of Pete and Pete on DVD from Netflix to watch. I mean, I'm not immune to this. I don't think any of us are. But I think that's what it is. We want to go back to that simple time when we were kids and we felt safe. And again, obviously, not all kids feel safe. But I think if you didn't feel safe as a kid, you probably aren't into this nostalgia thing. You probably are totally like, what is this nostalgia kick? And if that's true, that further kind of demonstrates my point. Yeah, we like those things, but from the past, but it's more about the way it makes us feel. It makes us feel comfortable, it makes us feel secure, it makes us feel like we're back there, back in 1995 or 93. But I have news for you. The Gulf War was going on in the early 90s, so it wasn't as safe and pretty as we like to think it was. But again, we were kids, we didn't think about it much. It's interesting, because when I was a kid when the Gulf War was going on, I remember my father watching stuff on CNN all day on the cable TV, and I'm just, saying, oh, this is the end of the world and stuff. I mean, so obviously to him, and to probably all of our parents, it wasn't such a pleasant time. It was scary too. And maybe for many of them, they too were looking back nostalgically at the past. And yet, it seems in our generation, it's just to the nth degree. It's much bigger than it ever was, to the point where it's actually a major cash cow for the entertainment industry. So, I think you can attribute a lot of that to the fact that we have so much more information being hurled at us that it seems even scarier than it may have seemed to our parents, or at least it's harder to not see. You know what I mean? So, nostalgia. Good, bad. What are your thoughts? What do you think? Leave me comments in the section below, in the comment section below. All 5 of you who are watching this. I'll probably post this on my Facebook too. You can leave comments there if you don't want to log into YouTube, and that's fine. But tell me what you think. Nostalgia. Good, bad. Why are we so into it? What's this nostalgic? And how long do you think this is going to go on? How long will this last before we snap out of it and we say, we got to come back to reality? So yeah, give me your thoughts, and I'll see you next time. Next video, maybe another Scott's Thoughts, maybe another comic video like Lefty Mug. I don't know. We'll see you next time.